Yo, I have to be very sure, bro. I have to be very sure. But yo, what's up, everybody? Um, Welcome to another episode of Dead Radio with your main man, Bangy is Dead. And today I've got a very special guest. You already know we only have special guests on this show. And yeah, let him introduce yourself. What's good, bro? How you doing?
I'm good, man. It's Anthony Bila, Rulani
Okay.
Anthony Bila, when I'm in full artist mode. Some people know me as the expressionist, the
Right.
isolationist. Just the guy doing his thing, yo.
Oh, word, bro. Word. So before I get into before I get into other topics and stuff, so I need to find out like about your background, like where you grew up and where you're from, and like where we were born, and like just to get an idea of what inspired you to be like who you are today.
I was born in the East Rand, Kuruleni,
Right.
in a township called Tembisa, in 1986. And if you
And we
do
had to
the
give us a date. Now we know how old you
Uh,
are.
no, man. I don't normally give out my. I don't give out my birthday. I don't mind giving out my age, because you
Right.
are the age of
Right.
your mind, and for me, the older you are, it's a benefit because you have the experience of time, but it doesn't mean your mind has to be old in the things you consume and the way you approach.
Right.
Like old is obsessed
Yeah, I agree.
in like newness, but like what you lose with that is often experience and like things that have been tried and tested and things that have had trial and error. But yeah, I
Yeah.
grew up in Tembisa. Moved to Kempton Park in the 90s when it was
Right.
legal. Dad was like, yo, you got to get out of Tembisa. Tembisa was a bit of a rough neighborhood. And
Right.
I grew up in Leboeng and Duluini, the
Sure.
1619. Um, and yeah, born in Tembisa Hospital, man. Like thoroughly bred in the East Rand. Went to school in
Right.
Benoni because the schools in Kempton Park were too wild. There was a school I
Right.
was supposed to go to called Sapir, and then the year before I was supposed to go there when I was in grade 7. Some
Yeah.
kid got stabbed in the high
What?
school,
Got
and my mom was like,
stabbed.
yeah, got
You're
stabbed
not
in
going there.
early days. My mom was like,
What?
yeah, we're not
You're
doing
not
that.
going there. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Ended up
What?
going to a school called Wordsworth in Benoni. And I went there.
Damn.
Yeah, actually, quite a few quote unquote entertainers, famous ish people went there. Uh,
What does famous just even mean?
because it's relative. In South Africa, fame is a relative term.
A
Uh,
hundred percent.
yeah, yeah. People like Naked DJ and his twin sisters, who I think also had a
Right.
radio show on YFM back in the day. Lera went to my high school as well. So, but I mean, generally,
Dope.
East End produces,
I won't
uh,
lie. Yeah, quite a
a
number of people
pedigree
actually
of
from the.
people.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Word. Yeah, quite a number of people actually from the East End. Quite a number. So fine.
yeah. People often downplayed when they make it though, which is weird. All of a sudden people are from Soweto when they aren't, which is always like a weird,
You
a
know how
weird
it
pattern.
is, dude. People always want to belong like where the majority of people belong, because like it's like a
Yeah,
cool thing.
yeah, it's weird, man. But yeah, I mean that's kind of the gist of the
Okay, so
background.
now o- through all of that happening, you being at school, what makes you get into like photography? And was that like the first thing you get into?
Not at all, man. My first creative outlet, if I recall, was definitely singing. Like I used to love singing. Like I would listen to a lot of R&B, a lot of soul, a lot of
Right.
jazz. Growing up, my dad is like a big Bob Marley fan, so we were singing
Word.
Buffalo Soldier at an early age, and that's like was my first outlet.
Okay.
And I was a big reader. And then the reading
Right.
led me into comics, and comics led me into drawing. And like these are all things I still do now. I just don't like publicize them too much because they're
Right.
for
Right.
me and not for commercial
Right.
purposes. Okay?
Yeah.
And then through the comics and the drawing, I would say eventually, like 15, 20 years later, it led to photography because what I realized in
What?
retrospect is drawing is like taking a slow photograph. And that's what it was pre photography. Like, the,
Right.
the pharaohs, the Mongols, like medieval Britain, the Queen Victoria, all of those people, when they wanted themselves to be remembered and immortalized, they got
Mm-hmm.
painters, Rembrandt, they got
Right.
Da Vinci, they got Michelangelo, the
Right.
Medici family would,
Mm-hmm.
get
Mm-hmm.
people, commission them to do work. So those, to me, especially in that period, it was just like a slow photograph. That's all it was. It was like a long exposure, to use a technical term.
Right. Damn.
So yes, my eye was always trained because I would consume art and all kinds of art, like Japanese illustration and anime and manga,
But how old were
and
you at this
fine
point when
art
you're
and like
consuming this
rock.
stuff?
What?
How old are you like when you're consuming this stuff?
Geez, man, as soon as I could hold the book by myself, I was actually
Damn.
uh, telling Kenny about there's a library when we moved to the suburbs. There was a library in within like 5 minutes walking distance from where I stayed, and obviously I got the library card, whatever, and
Yeah.
we're only allowed to take out 4 books. And what I did, because I would consume them quickly and I wanted more, I would steal 2 or 3 more books and put them in my pants when I was like 8 or 9, man.
What?
Maybe even 12 or 13. I'd always give them back, obviously,
Yeah,
but like
obviously.
but like I didn't have the time to like take out 5 books and then have to wait a week and then get another 5 because I'd go through those books like daily because they were like kids' books.
Damn. Right.
So what I didn't realize though is that the librarian actually saw this and like was just letting me slide because she knew that I would always get the
You're
books
just
back.
reading. Word.
Yeah,
And you
I'm
just
just
like
consuming.
reading. Like,
Yeah, which is very rare
damn,
because
that's
Karens usually ain't for like
nah,
they
it
don't
ain't about that.
taking things that don't belong to them.
Yeah, they'll go
Yeah,
with you. But yeah.
that's kind of where the photography. Like, I actually hated photography for the longest time, or at least being in photographs and like being photographed. And it was
Really?
only when I was maybe in like 22, 23 that I started kind of looking at photography as something that I would enjoy doing because I wanted a new outlet. And it
Right.
was, I would contribute it primarily to Tumblr, man. I would consume a
Right.
lot of Tumblr at that age, which is now almost 10 years ago. Yeah, it was
Right.
about 10
It's
years ago now.
crazy.
In like Tumblr, you'd see all of these like street style photography was becoming a thing,
A
and like
thing. Yeah.
and like I'd consume all of these images. And the funny thing about being creative is that as soon as you consume something creative, eventually consuming it doesn't become enough. You need to start
Mm-mm.
creating it yourself. Like whatever medium it is, ask any creative person across any spectrum, whether it's engineering or like painting or like philosophy or whatever or poetry, because
Right.
for me any industry has creative potential. It's how you apply your mind to solve problems people don't even know exist yet or that exist and you
Right.
see a solution to. So
Mm,
yeah, I
mm.
would consume all of these things and eventually I was like, yo man, I have to start taking photographs because another issue was that black lives didn't matter to the internet, especially back then. Like if you
Right.
Google and you use the internet, it was very white. Like it was, you know, it was
Mm,
pre
mm.
pre the conscientiousness that exists now, but there's still like a long way to go. If you Google, I don't know, professional businessman, the photos that
Yeah.
are going to come up are like white,
Yep.
scary looking
I know
dudes.
about that. Yeah.
And
Even
you
professional
Google
hairstyles.
unprofessional, and it's going to be dudes
Yeah,
with
dude.
mine and like stubble
I
and
checked that
beards.
shit out. It's crazy. Yeah, I checked it out too, and I was so shocked when I saw that because I knew these things happen, but then when I googled it for myself, like I'm professional hairstyles and like dreadlocks pop up and
Oh,
afros, and
it's
it's like, what the
biased, man.
hell?
And that's
It's
why like
extremely biased.
is like important even in programming. Like I was watching a program today and I actually started reading up on it on facial recognition software and
Right.
how facial recognition software that's been designed has been used to like quell people that have been rioting and protesting and doing all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Issue is that the software has been developed by obviously almost completely white teams and primarily white men. So the social recognition software is misrecognizing people. So there were instances where the software would pick me up somewhere in a protest and say it's Tabang Rabotata. And
Yeah.
now people are looking for you, and like, they say, but we've got the footage because it hasn't been trained. The AI hasn't been trained to pick up the nuances of black. But when it was white men,
Right.
could identify them correctly. So the issue would be that you could be framed for something that you didn't do. And there was even a woman who was in
That's so
America at a
crazy.
Ivy League school, and she was Arab, and someone in her home country committed some terrorist act, and the social recognition software said it was her. And thankfully,
What?
she was in a different country, or else they would have said it's you, you're a terrorist.
Yeah.
So, like, it shows you how there's a bias even in the programming of these things if you don't have a room full of diverse people that account
Mm,
for
mm,
everyone that
mm.
exists.
Right. That makes so much sense. It's probably just like this whole. I know it's a funny example, but it's like the whole Band-Aid thing. Like, do you see
Yeah.
Band-Aid now is creating like Band-Aids of color,
Well, yeah.
but only now. It's like, dude, you
100
guys have
years.
been around for like 100 years, dude, and you guys have created one shade for
What?
100 years.
Yeah, and I mean, I used to get in trouble in school when I moved to like Model C schools from schools in the hood because the white kids would use like Cokies and markers and crayons and color pencils that were their skin tone, but the
Yeah.
default we called skin color. And I would say,
Ah.
like, why are you calling it skin color? Because there's lots of different skin colors here. Brown is a skin color. All of these, and then it was like, no, he's being a rebel. He's being disrespectful to the teacher. And it
Yeah,
was
he's
just,
starting a ruckus.
yeah, it was just like legitimately asking, like, how can you call one thing skin color when there's so many skin colors? Call it, I don't know
100%.
what you'd call white people's skin color, to be honest, because there's colors for everything else. Like, I don't know, pink,
Right.
I don't know, but like, it was a thing, and I got in trouble in school for it. But we
But of
moved.
course, yeah, but of course. So now at what point do you get a camera and do you start using a camera?
Yo, man, I had a friend called Silas Lechwaiti. We actually used to draw together. He's a talented illustrator, and he had like this old Zoom, really crappy digital camera. And
Right.
what happened was like through the Tumblr blogging, um, a lot of like the blog got recognized, and like I used to borrow his camera because I wanted to start taking photos of friends. And after
Right.
borrowing his camera 2 or 3 or 4 times and taking these photos, Mr. Price hit me up, and they were like, "Yo, we want you to do some work with us. Would you be keen to shoot some street
Wait,
style?"
wait, wait, wait. Are you for real?
Yeah, man, that's how it happened.
Just
And
like
I
that? Nah,
obviously,
nah,
like,
nah, nah.
I'm not a
What?
professional. I don't know what's happening, and I was
But when
about
you
to.
posted this on Tumblr,
Yeah, man.
so you
Yeah, man.
made noise through Tumblr.
Yeah, man. Well, Tumblr was
The
big in the
fuck?
day, man. You might
No,
have been too young to
look. I
remember.
definitely, I know. No, I remember how big it was. I just didn't know like brands like were starting to like scout people ever since like
Yeah.
Tumblr days. I thought like the scouting thing was like new to Instagram type thing. You know what I mean?
No, man. Well, to the credit of the agency that worked through, or that Mr. Price worked through, I
Right.
don't know if you know a guy called Neville Trickett. So he used to own an agency that worked as like the primary creative agency for Mr. Price. And like Neville is like a really creative and genius guy, probably in his like 70s or 80s now. If
Right.
you're not sure who he is, he's Jamal and Lex Trickett of Bubblegum Club.
Yes.
Lex Trickett's dad. And like if you know
Ah.
anything about like Lex's creative mind and the work that he does at Bubblegum Club, you can see that the apple hasn't fallen far from the tree. So it
Right.
was Neville Trickett and his daughter who used to work at that agency back then. I think it was called Wisdom and Youth, if I
Right.
remember correctly. They were like, yo, man, we've been, they were on the pulse. They got it. So they hit me up and they were like, would you like to, fly to to Durban? We've got this campaign. I think MX Blouse was in that campaign. TT
Right.
Nteta that campaign. There was this blogger called the Fashionista, I think, who was also
Right.
part of like early days, man, early days. So like, yeah, they hit me up and I was about to be like, yo, I'm not a professional. And then they told me that there was a bag. and me being the person I am was like, oh yeah,
Oh, there's a
let's go. Yeah.
bag?
So I took some savings,
Crazy.
bought a camera, like a cheap camera. It was a Nikon D3100, if I remember correctly.
What?
Took that camera with me to Cape Town and like I downloaded like YouTube videos on tutorials and things. And then when we landed, we went, man. And then from
You
that,
joking?
nah,
You
man, that's how it
joking?
happened.
What the? I can't believe I've never heard this before, dude. So you're telling me, like, you didn't take this like professionally before you actually got a job. So
No, no.
the job forced you to be a professional,
Straight up, man. It
basically.
kind of chose me, man.
Crazy. That's so
There's
crazy, dude.
a theory called phenomena exotica, and it's
Right.
basically about synchronicity in that strange things happen, but they happen at the
For a
time
reason.
that they're supposed to for a reason, in like sync with other things. Like one of the examples from this synchronicity theorem is
Yeah.
this bought two lotto tickets. The one lotto
Right.
ticket was for a lottery in LA. The one was for a
Right.
lottery in New York. And then
Right.
both numbers ran and she won both times. The only issue was that the LA numbers won in New York and the New York numbers won in LA.
Born in
So
LA.
she
So she
couldn't cash
win
anything out.
anything.
Yeah. So it just shows you
Ah,
like this
damn.
situation of like things making sense but not making sense. Uh,
Right. Right.
because I had friends that had studied photography, that had done the thing professionally, and it didn't happen for them. And I just happened to be doing the right thing at the right time, but also being disruptive in my approach because I didn't do it the way that it was taught.
Right.
You learn the rules and then you break the rules. And usually innovation comes from people outside of that industry because their thinking is outlier and it's just like periphery to like school sometimes can be a deterrent to creativity because it's
Right.
teaching you to think in these
Sometimes.
stations.
Sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. That's why
Yeah.
you can't speak in absolute. You have to always give the room for sometimes, not
Sure.
always, to
Yeah, yeah,
contextualize.
yeah.
It's not a hard and fast rule ever.
Okay, so you go to this thing, you body it. I'm guessing you body it.
Yeah,
You kill
man.
it.
It went well. They were happy. I had a relationship with Mr. Price, and because of that, Woolworths saw the work that I did with
Oh
Mr. Price,
no.
and then
Ha, now the ball is moving.
it started just kind of happening, and then in between that, I'd go to like early Braamfontein days, catch the train. Um, Maboneng had just started also like street cred was a thing in Cape Town, and it was moving into
Which train,
Johannesburg.
hey? Because it can't be the hard train.
Nah, man, it was Metro Rail. What?
Yeah, because I was like, yo, the hard train, yo. Back then, there was no hard train, bro.
No, man. This was pre-Gautrain, but I mean
Damn,
20.
hustling boys for real. Yeah. So cool to go to Maboneng, Bram, getting the pictures, everything looking nice. Woolworths
Yeah.
pulls up, fine, you body it. And then from that point, what happens? Like, do you now
I mean, I still
go to
worked, man.
school?
Yeah, I still, because I went to Boston Media House and I studied radio production. And
Right.
then at J, I studied copywriting. And then I used to work part-time at this agency called HDI, which was a youth marketing specialist agency. So I started
Right.
working in Matric.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually got the plug through a guy at school who said I should go in audition because they were doing an advert for Absa Bank and they needed rappers. And back then I used to, through writing and stuff, we used to cipher at school. And this
Yeah.
white kid, like saw me and like was like, "Yo, Ant, I told them about you. Go audition. There's a bag." Um, and
Okay.
then and then wherever there's a bag, man, I
Yeah, you
found
there.
a route. I found a route. So it happens when you grow up with not too much, man. You
Yeah.
find you
A
find
bag
avenues,
everywhere.
you hustle. So yeah, I auditioned for that ad, and then I got a part in it, and then through that I met the MD and the CEO of that company, and they told me about this thing called the Junior Board of Directors, where they would get young people to come in once a week and talk to brands about what they think are good marketing strategies and bad marketing strategies. So we'd sit in like these focus group type things, but they always
Right.
wanted kids who thought outside of the limits. Like they wanted kids who pushed the boundaries and were kind of ahead of the curve. Like I
Right.
remember there was a session we had with Nokia, And this was this was like VJ phones were just touching. Like VJ phones were like, it wasn't even
Yeah.
megapixels yet. And
Right.
Nokia was like, yo, what kinds of phones should we invent? And we were like, yo, the next phone company that makes a phone that has music that you can play, that has radio, that has a camera, and has internet, that it's going to be the next big phone, because none of that existed. There were iPods, there was like a 5110, there
Yeah.
was like pocket radios, CD players. None of those things had existed in a singular object. And we were like, as like young people generally are thinking of like innovation and things that aren't happening. So that's kind of the work that I did there. And even after I studied and graduated from Boston Media House in UJ,
Yeah.
they offered me a job, and it was my first job for the first 3 years of my life. I worked at
Oh,
HDI before I moved to another agency. So I
right.
worked in advertising for like 10 years. I started out as an account manager, which is a very like strict role, and like very like, yeah, it's not creative at all, but it was
What do
like the
you
job.
do?
You basically are a project manager. You manage like
Mm-hmm.
relationships between the
Just
clients
make sure
and
stuff
creative
is
team.
done.
Yeah, are the posters done? Is the ad gonna fly it on time? You're managing the relationship. And my supervisor, or the person I reported to, was like, "Yo, man, you always have creative ideas, more so than you are structured at like, the logistics of the creative flow."
Right.
Then he suggested that I should move more into the creative field. So when I left
Mm-hmm.
there, got another job, I was pushing as a copywriter. And from
Right.
copywriting and writing like TV ads and radio ads and print ads and conceptualizing things, I moved into being a creative group head, which is managing other creatives and like, trying to build
Mm-hmm.
relationships
Mm-hmm.
with clients. And then the last creative job I had in advertising was is basically as a creative director. And that's when I was like, yo, the photography is
Yeah.
great enough. I don't need to be burning the candle at both ends. So let me step away. So like I took a break for like 2, 3 months, still doing some photography work, and then
Yeah.
I went hard and like started pushing myself and promoting myself to agencies and brands, and
Right.
that's what I've been doing up until now.
So that's what has turned like Anthony, the guy that works at the agency, to Anthony the boss type
Yeah,
thing.
man, the boss of one, the boss of for me, like in my company Studio Bila, I never want to fully employ more than a handful of people, because I
Yeah.
don't want a scalable company. It's the smart move is to scale your company and get bought out by some conglomerate and make your billions. But like I
Mm-hmm.
want to stay small and grow really slowly and organically,
Yeah.
because I want the integrity of the work to always be there. And I also don't
Mm-hmm.
want to lay claim to human beings like you are my employee. I want collaborators and partners. So when we have
Right.
a project that fits, we call in the various people that make sense. We do the project, everyone gets a share. And
Everyone
then
pulls their weight.
if you want to do something else, you're not like tied to a desk every week. And I mean, something like Corona, I think, has been um, a horrible like deluge on the planet. But the
Right.
silver lining is that it's made people realize you don't have to be in an office every day. You can work remotely. It's changed the way we knew
You
things,
think.
and it
Yeah.
forced our mind into like innovating and thinking outside of the ways we move.
100%.
Like how many meetings that could have been an email, a phone
Bro,
call, like
a
but now
FaceTime.
a FaceTime. I didn't.
Niggas now want to link up, bro. Where's petrol now? Go meet up, sit down.
Yeah,
Okay, so now for the photography booming, and then with everything going well, you start Studio Bila. So Studio Bila, um, why did you like? I know you explained why you started Studio Bila, but there's
yeah,
people that are photographers, or there's people that do what you do, but that don't have like something called Studio Bila. If you get what I mean, like there's
yeah,
people that just would rather take pictures and build themselves as the brand.
yeah.
So why didn't you build the Anthony Bila brand, and why did you decide to like actually just like have something else that you look over that could grow?
Longevity, man, and also because I have a plethora of creative interests, and the way the world exists is that if the people understand you as one thing, they want you to stick to that one thing and they never want you to
Yeah.
break out. And just because people have known me as a photographer, I was many things before as a photographer, and I'll be many things after being a photographer, and I've been
Right.
many during being a photographer. So for me, Studio Bila is the repository for all of those ideas. Even
Ah.
sometimes going to my Instagram for Studio Bila, it is a very different thing to my Instagram for the Expressionist because that's
Mm-hmm.
become a silo that's only a segment in my mind to what Studio Bila is. In the next,
Ah.
6 months to a year, I think people are going to be very surprised at the kinds of things that Studio Bila is producing and the kind of
Mm-hmm.
people it's collaborating with. Things that are very outside of also the cool industries that, are fashion, music, graphic design, and illustration.
Yeah.
Those are kind of like the things people consider creative. When there's creativity in agriculture, there's creativity in textiles, there's creativity in plumbing, there's creativity in
Right.
any. And if for me, again, to answer your question of why I started Studio Bila, I wanted to venture into those things because I my mind is a problem solving apparatus. That's what I use my mind for. And
Right.
using that avenue, I can plug in with people that are experts in certain fields, but don't see, the connecting of dots between different ideas and bringing
Mm.
those together to solve human problems. So that's why it exists. And also for like a lot of my um, film work, like the film that I'm going to drop called The Isolationist, that
Right.
doesn't necessarily exist in The Expressionist because it's very abstract, it's very weird, it's very dark. Like, when people go to the photography work on The Expressionist, they want to see portraits and things that are more aesthetically traditional
Right.
and
Pleasing. Mm.
so it's like understanding that,
Mm-hmm.
creating that, my ultimate dream is for the Expressionist to exist as a business venture where I'm working now on getting younger photographers to work as
The
people that
expressionist.
as the Expressionist. You know what I mean? Like it's just
Mm.
title holder. Like think of what's a good example of a film, Batman. Batman has been Michael Keaton, Val Kilmer, Rob Pattinson now. There's been, different people
Yeah.
that take on the mantle and run with it. It doesn't,
Yeah.
it's bigger than a person, it's an idea. And that's how
Right.
expression is that it's not really about me. I was just kind of the springboard and the talent that wants to connect with it and work through it. Let's go, let's do it.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
when that happens, it gives me the freedom for me to become the recluse that I am, disappear and just work on weird projects and weird vibes that don't have to be commercially viable and commercially feasible because Studio Bila is just where ideas go to live and die and experiment without
Yeah.
worrying about, oh, how is it going to be perceived?
Is
Oh,
it
it
gonna be
needs
cool? Do people think it's gonna be
successful.
dope?
We exist in a world for me that panders too much to social media, and I think it's warped the creative minds of a lot of people that it's
Yes.
easy to create work that's people pleasing but doesn't
Yes.
test you.
Resonate with anybody.
Yeah, it even doesn't even make you feel afraid. For me, like this should be an element of fear whenever you drop a new project because you feel like you've pushed yourself into new territory and you're not sure how it's going to be received. Like once
Yeah.
there's this David Bowie interview where he speaks about once you stop trading water, um, then you're in a good creative space because if you're on land all the time, like you're not elevating, you're not pushing yourself, you're not trial and error, and creativity
Yeah.
happens from mistakes and
Yes.
trying it again and making
Yes.
a better mistake and
Yeah.
iterating in versions of it. Like if you look through the best creative minds and like the behind the scenes of the finished product, you see like the iterations. Like there's this documentary that I saw from Issey Miyake and the way
Yeah.
that the perfectionist, but like the first version of the drawing to the thing that went down the runway were like
Completely different.
insane. And like, he also didn't rush his process versus now where like as soon as the thing is even sort of ready, people want to post because you want the clout, you want recognition, you want likes. Versus sometimes slowing down, taking your time, refining it, and getting to a point where you feel like it's evolved and grown. Because
And
the
it's
more
ready
you
to be posted.
naturally just evolves. What did
Yeah,
was 5 years ago, and what it is now is an example of the iterative process of branching out into different products and
right,
different quality controls on the garments that you make,
right.
and the ideas evolving. And
Yeah,
that's what needs to exist for us as creatives, you know?
that definitely what needs to exist. Definitely, because um, you know, there was a conversation we're having on online. Because I know it's not necessarily based on what we're talking about, but because it's online, it's surrounded by the Vogue challenge, right? And
Yeah.
um, before I tell you my view of the Vogue challenge, since
Yeah.
you've actually had you've actually been featured in Vogue, so actually like
Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
prior
And
to all of this,
uh,
so now I need you to tell me what you think about the whole Vogue like challenge. Before I tell you like my 2 cents.
yeah, multiple features, by the way, in Vogue and
Yeah,
in Vogue Print.
multiple. Oh, sorry, sorry.
Nah, nah, I'm just playing. But for me, it was defeatist, you know,
Yeah,
because the whole point of the Vogue challenge was subversive in that it was supposed to show how Vogue has missed the opportunity to empower and diversify their offering, and because a large majority or a fair majority of the the influence and the clout that they have derives from black culture and blackness. And
right.
for that publication to exist for 126 years, it only have one singular black photographer in the
Take
history
a
of that
cover,
126
which
years
is
to
ridiculous.
and for me it's like cool, the photographer is seen as the apex of that, but how many models that are black and people of color, how many disabled models, how many models that are different shapes and sizes, stylists, makeup artists, the whole infrastructure, because I think we all also run the risk of becoming myopic in our views of like how things are. Like, cool, the photographer is an element of that creative process that creates Vogue.
Right. Yes.
Writers, the editors, all of those, it's an ecosystem. And the very reason that they didn't have blackness in that publication was because the whole ecosystem didn't intersect in all of these things of all the kinds of
Yes.
people who consume the work. So for
Yeah.
me, it was a big issue, and also because and I tweeted about this also, is that like this the construct of those things is that if we allow one individual person of color or black person once in a while, you guys must be grateful for that and you must clap. Clap
Yeah.
for the
No.
one, the special black. And
Yeah. The special
that's what
guy.
happens, you know? If
A
Vogue
girl.
gives you crumbs, you're like, yo, I'm special. I'm different. I'm not like these other. I got there, and that also is defeatist to the movement because if they're not consistently featuring us, then it's a problem. And that's exactly what I tweeted to say that like this is glittering generality. Like this is a smokescreen that you're taking all of this free content, by the way,
The Rainbow
the
Nation.
that these black people have created with like
Yeah.
their hearts and their souls and their own resources, and now
Yeah.
you're just going to feature it to kind of blackface it. You know what I mean? To kind of
Bro, literally
because
be like,
for me,
oh look, we featured them now.
yeah, and
Uh,
for me, like so you feature black creatives through that whole ecosystem, have black chief and editors for the next 126 years. Don't celebrate a singular time. You posted 10 different
right.
photographers on a hashtag, and 2 weeks later we forget about it. Like that doesn't work for me at all. Like, and I say that knowing that I've been featured in the thing, but I still recognize the problem, and I'm not going to be afraid to voice it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So now what happens tomorrow? The Vogue hits you up and says, "Yo,
If they
Anthony,
hit me up,
I
then
want you to shoot a bit.
I take
We
the
want you
job.
to feature you. Want to feature you in
I
Vogue."
take the job, but then I insist on the bag because, as we established at the beginning of this
The bag.
conversation, bags will be there. And then I bring
Yeah.
my team with me. I insist on an all black team, a black person writing it, so that these institutions, you know, break out of these molds of like, oh, let's take silos of and pockets of blackness and
Yeah.
feature them. Uh,
Faces.
it's taking that work, but then making it as black as possible through the ecosystem and looking out for the people in and around my creative circle. It's not just that, oh, Anthony got a feature in Vogue. I'm running with it, and then I'm there working in Europe with all white teams, it defeats the purpose. You know what I'm
It
saying?
really
So
does. It really
I still
does.
take the bag and I use it to open up more doors and more avenues for more people. That's how I do it. Because you
Right.
should be able to call something out constructively and critically and not be afraid that you're gonna get blackballed or like the
Mm,
gatekeepers are
mm.
gonna shut you out because you challenged a relevant problem and a relevant issue that existed.
100%. 100%. So now, before the lockdown actually happened, you actually had like big plans for this year. Because I remember us talking about like the calendar, and a
Yes.
couple of shoes and how we're gonna work out. You're actually supposed to fly out to the UK just
Yeah.
before what's this? The borders were closed, and you had just came from the States, right?
Yeah. It
So
was
now,
yeah. Corona hit just the week before I was supposed to fly out to the UK.
right,
Uh, hey man, but you make lemonade out of lemons.
of
Yeah. So
course.
I had
What are we gonna
a
do there?
resident. I had a residency with this organization called Format, which is
Right.
like a fine arts organization based in Derby in the UK. And what
Hmm.
they do is work with photographers and fine artists from all over the world, and
Right.
it was basically like a residency commission to create work in and around Derby, and the work could be something of my choosing, and then the work would
Right.
be exhibited. So I would have been there for I think it was 6 weeks, so about
Hmm.
a month and a half or so, and then create the work, exhibit the work. And then there was also a portfolio review with various photo editors, photo commissioners from all around the UK and the world were going
Right.
to that converge in Derby for this format festival, which is the biggest one of its kind. And they would basically review your portfolio of work, and it's a networking opportunity to connect with
Right.
different contacts from across the world.
Hmm.
So all
Hmm.
of that obviously couldn't happen because of Corona,
Yeah.
but the portfolio review at least is still going to happen online with
Bet.
10 papers for each of the people that have been booked.
Dope. Dope.
Um,
Dope. Dope. Dope.
and yeah, and before that, I was in the US for 3 months,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
building
Yeah.
a over there. Went to go see my partner as well,
Cute.
and also
Very
just like
cute.
wake up and walk all day and shoot. I was outdoors because she was working and studying also, so I'd
Yeah.
spend weekdays for about 16 hours setting out creative routes for myself. Like I would go to um, the Guggenheim and then walk around and take photographs and meet people and go to exhibitions
Uh-huh.
and then just build a network of people and contacts in the US and also get in touch with friends
Right.
and people that I'd been in contact with or that had moved there. So yeah, man, there was a lot happening, but for me, like this just changed the trajectory of the river,
Of
but the river
course. Of
flows
course.
forward.
Still flowing. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So cool. You back. About to go. Lockdown happens. Now, how does lockdown change how you work? Because obviously, change how everyone works.
yeah,
Because you can't just go into the street and take pictures. Now you have to just look around you and find
yeah,
what you can make do with what you've got. So how do
yeah.
you like now structure yourself and like what are you doing now that you never used to do before? What's
Well, the
happening right
first
now?
first project I actually did, and I haven't actually put it out, was a photo project I called. It's like still untitled, but the working title is From My Window. So because we had to quarantine, I would just whenever I had to do errands or grocery runs, I would
Yeah.
roll up windows, take my camera, and as I drive and observe how different the world is, I would take photos from my car, but like
Okay.
including the perspective of the car. So you'll catch a little bit of the steering wheel or the side
Right.
mirror or
Right.
the rear view mirror or like the
Yes.
window and the reflection. And it's actually turned into an interesting body of work because it's like the world is quarantined from you and you're quarantined from the world, but you're in
Right.
mobile vehicles. So that was just like, your ideas adapt to the nature of the world around you.
No cap.
Uh,
Yeah. If you really
and
got ideas.
yeah, they come and they go.
No, I'm
So
saying, I'm
like
saying
that's like a working
if you really
project.
got ideas, your mind adapts. If you really have ideas, if you're
Yeah.
not stealing, if you really have them.
Yeah, good ideas are, they can and that's something I learned in advertising, is that
Yeah,
like our creative directors always said big ideas are translatable across language, across mediums. So like sometimes I would come up with, say, a good script for radio, but it wasn't a good
yes.
idea for the brand. So the creative director would say, well, if
Let's
this
save
idea is
that.
good at radio, how do we
Mm,
translate it to TV and print and billboard and online and all of these other things? And if you
oh
couldn't do that,
shit,
then
it's a
the
bad
idea
idea.
wasn't flexible enough. So whenever you come up
Uh,
with ideas, it's always around how how can I cross pollinate this idea to various.
word.
So the second project, to answer your question, was the Isolationist, which is this film that I've made,
Right,
and I actually just did a in-depth podcast interview with Kenny for her company One Of, and we
right.
literally discussed this film for about an hour and a half, and like some of the philosophies and layers behind that. So if you're keen to check that out, that's a thing. But like that
Bro,
idea for that existed for maybe 3 years, maybe more, and I just never
what?
had time. The
No, no,
idea was
no,
just
no, no,
like
no, 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 no,
floating
no.
in my
You
mind.
bullshitting. You capping.
Yeah,
You
it was just
capping.
existed because I
What?
it was just like serendipity again, that phenomena exotica of like right time, right place, and like the world gets it now because we've all been isolated. But like the
Yeah, dude.
original idea was around the metaphorical sense of isolation, and even when people feel a sense of mental health um, uh, issues, and when people are depressed or feel anxiety, they tend to seclude themselves and like
Yes.
isolate themselves from the world. So it was those kinds of thoughts that just kind of came to fruition in the version that they did because I was in lockdown in my apartment by myself.
Right.
So that's kind of how that evolved. Um, One of the things that had inspired it was Clapping for the Wrong Reasons, this Childish Gambino short film that I'd seen.
The one with
It was a
Rihanna.
very thing, but it just kind of gave me this idea to like use.
The one with the Rihanna.
No, 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 no. This existed way before that. This was even before Atlanta was a show.
Really?
Um, yeah,
You check
yeah.
it
So
out.
yeah, Clapping for the Wrong Reasons. It's on YouTube, Vimeo, all of those places. But yeah, so like the idea had just been swimming there, and like I think people generally have that. Like I've got a lot of ideas that I've had for a long time, and I've just
Right.
never made
Yeah.
time for. So I started scripting it. I found this free software that helps you to format your script, and then I
Okay.
storyboard it. And then and storyboarding is just finding the shots that are going to work for it, and then I
Yeah.
started shooting it by myself and being in it, and it evolved, and that was another project that I did. But I mean, in
And
between that, I'm illustrating and I'm drawing. I've set up my music equipment again. Gondo from Redux
yeah.
actually gave me some beats, just to
Dope.
have fun with, play around with. So I
Yeah.
just found different avenues because what happens with me anyway with creative ideas, once I've like it's like an exorcism, it's like this thing that exists in you that you have to get out. And once you've
Yes.
expelled it and it exists abstract to you, like I'm depleted in that medium. So like because I did this film, I didn't want to do anything in video after that. So I started drawing more. I started writing and working on like music projects again.
Right. Yeah.
And again, none of this is necessarily for the world's consumption. It's just another way to recharge the creative battery in another way and using different mediums, because the things that I learn now doing that are always applicable all the way back around. And like this is why I
Right.
like film as a medium, because in film it's the culmination of all the things I've always loved. Like in storyboarding, I'm drawing, I'm creating the physical storyboarding of the thing. There's
Yeah.
photography, film through motion picture, because
Right.
the video is just a lot of photos in succession of each other in frames. There's writing and writing the script. There's music production, there's sound design. So like the holy grail, the mecca of creativity for me personally is film, because films can encapsulate all aspects of creativity, even fashion
Yes.
design. There's a Jean-Paul Gaultier, for example. There's a movie called
Yes.
Element that he did the wardrobe for. And if you've never
Okay.
seen the Element with Bruce Willis and Mila Jovovich, like go do yourself a favor and go see how even like taking someone whose niche is design and fashion and
Mm-hmm.
applying it like a post-apocalyptic futuristic movie made it like incredible work, which is why
Pop.
I like film is my thing. But I mean, yeah, so
Right.
that's how I've dealt with the nature of being secluded, isolation, and solitude. That's
So
that,
now, when
that.
does the Isolationist drop?
It drops on the 20th. I might drop it early on the 19th, but the goal is the
Yeah.
20th, which is Saturday.
Right.
But very likely to be out on Friday. I might do just like a soft launch on Friday and start promoting it um, on the Saturday or the Monday. But like it will
Right.
be available to be seen on the 20th of July.
That's dope. That's dope. So now, when you get into like, obviously everything you're doing right now is completely new to you. You know what I mean? You like releasing a short film, and you being like the main person in the short film is all completely new. Now, when you go into something like that, what's the process like? Do you read books on it? Do you like just watch movies just based around the concept of what you're trying to get into, or do you do like thorough like research?
All of the above, man. Like the first step is drawing on your resources of the kinds of film you admire and the kinds of
Yeah.
directors you admire. The next step into that is reading up on those directors and their process doing that film. And then it's straight up research into what is, so the way I do it is what is my idea, and then how
Mm-hmm.
do I make that idea come to life? That's how I've learned everything I've ever done because I'm
Right.
self-taught in those things. So it's like, oh, I want this thing in the film, so now I've got to learn After Effects. Oh, I want to do
Right.
this photo shoot like this, and then I have to reverse engineer how to do it and obtain
Mm,
the skill set to do that thing. So that's kind of like the process that I follow. And like again, film is just like this culmination of all of these things that I've kind of done at different stages of drawing, of writing as a kid, of consuming
right.
comics, of watching movies, and like I'm a big movie buff, and especially in isolation, I've consumed all kinds of very old, very rare, very weird, very abstract movies. I'm not watching Fast and the Furious during like my isolationist period. I'm watching The Elephant Man by David Fincher. I mean, not David Fincher, David Lynch. I'm
Right.
watching Yorgos Lanthimos's The Lobster, all kinds of abstract movies. I'm watching Citizen Kane by Orson Welles.
Right.
Very like movies that aren't generally in the mainstream, but are part of the filmography of like great movies you have to see. The same way, like to be a great designer, you must know great designers. Like you must know who Martin Margiela is. You must know who
Nah,
Jean
I don't know who's
Gaultier,
that.
Kubo, Ismiyaki. You've got
I don't know who's that, bro.
you don't know Margiela? Get out of
I'm
here.
joking.
I know you're joking.
I'm
That's why I'm
messing
like, get out
around.
of here. But like, if you want to be great, you've got to consume the greats because creativity is much like a physical diet. Whatever you're
Yeah,
consuming
it's gonna
is
show on
going
your
to
face.
show in your palate, in your taste.
100%.
Are you
100%.
eating McDonald's and wanting
Oh,
to perform
what?
like Usain Bolt, or are you eating five-star Michelin meals and like having a balanced diet and exercising and pushing those muscles, to be like a
Yeah,
pristine athlete in your field? And that's kind of my approach to things. Once in a while, takeaway and fast food isn't bad, but if it's your steady diet, crap in, crap out. That's just
right.
and,
100%.
and also just for like young or any creative, there's always going to be that gap between the things you consume and your actual ability, and like the work is the gap to reach that. So like the films that I admire, I don't have the resource or the teams or the budgets to create them, but I'm working
Yeah,
towards standing the elements to get there the same way you would in design, in product
right.
design or fashion. It's like you're consuming the echelon and the best CMTs and the best fabrics, but the things that you have at your access may not be there, but you're working
Right.
towards being there. And every time you do it, you
100%.
get better so that when the resources meet your skill, eventually you're
I'm good to
operating at like
go.
optimal level that's just like God level.
Yeah, bro. Big things start small, man. Big things start small. That's all the time. So now, what's the future looking like for you? Like after the isolist, what's next?
The Isolationist, the tongue twister, right?
Ish, dog. I thought it was the isolist, the isolationist. Say the
uh,
isolationist,
yeah, man, I've
the
already started.
isolationist. Oh my god.
Yeah, I took like a 2 week kind of slowdown period to just consume again.
Yeah,
Consuming movies, anime, books, short stories, all kinds of things. But I'm working on a lot of illustration right now for myself. So I've got like these series of characters that I've just been drawing and developing and like playing around with. So on a personal level, I'm just working on those illustrations, working on the music stuff with just a bunch of producers and friends for the fun of it. But on the
yeah,
work front, yeah, I've got one or two, bag projects to sustain my living conditions.
yeah.
And
Bag projects.
yeah, and then outside of that, like working on the next short film, like whether that's a fashion film or I want to do something very different to what the Isolationist is, just so that I test a different part of my brain and show
Yeah,
change and diversity, and that's going to be influenced by the things that I'm consuming and the states of the world now and the ideas that
yeah.
I have. But trust that it's
True.
going to be strange. It's going to be weird. Weird is a good
Yeah, no, the
place.
isolationist is a bit I wouldn't say weird, it's just a bit different. There's certain like shots that obviously I'm speaking from a point of privilege because I've watched it before it came out, obviously.
Yeah.
But like it's like I find it really dope because there's certain shots that like catch me off guard. And then there's certain shots where after I watch, like when the credits pop up and they're like, I only see your name. Now I start questioning like a lot of the shots because a lot of the shots looked like you had someone there. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like a lot of the shots look like you didn't do it alone. So I was like,
Yeah.
what the hell? But like it's a really good short film because it got me thinking. However, it did plant a seed of what I thought it could be about.
Yeah.
And the seed it did plant is that how okay, this is what I think it's about. I think it's about how isolation and lockdown has actually challenged us as people to really do an introspection on ourselves. And with that introspection happening, we've had to face demons and we've had to face happy moments and we had to face like all different types of emotions. And I think that's why there's a bath part where the person is cleaning themselves, and after that, they still see the demons, but now it's more relaxed. I don't know if I'm on the right path.
Hey man, you know what? You know what's the point of for me, uh, creative projects is, and especially film, and
Yeah.
which is why like I leave a lot open to interpretation in the film from the beginning to the end. There's no one way to see it because I've split the
Uh-huh.
film to about five people and I've had five different interpretations.
So,
Obvious links that like connect all of everybody, but like whatever is internal to you and the things that you have gone through and experienced, you project onto the film and they become true. So every answer is correct in the way that people have perceived it because your interpretation and the way that you've decoded that information and internalized it makes it true for you.
yes,
Everything is perception, and that movie is perception.
100%.
So you're correct
Uh-huh.
percent in what you've said, and everyone else who watches it will
That's
probably get
correct.
the same thing or different. But I'm always more interested in everyone else's interpretation than the thing
Yeah,
that I was saying. And that happens all the time when we communicate. I can say one thing to you, but you hear something else in return, and that's kind
100%.
of the
That's the
process
world.
of like encoding information, sending it, and somebody else decoding it.
Yes, yes. Okay, so last but not least, so there's an initiative that you actually took part of or that you created last week, towards the end of the week. And um, beside me really getting into it, just picking up from you getting into it, I'd like to tell me what it was about and why you did it. You know which initiative I'm
Yeah,
talking about.
yeah. I mean, I
Um,
assume I do, but I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, it was basically around all that has happened and is happening, and gender-based violence in South Africa in particular. The
Right.
fact that we've got a femicide rate that's approximately 5 times higher than anywhere else in the world, and
Right.
that's a shocking statistic and like factoid, whichever way you spin it. And I remember the last time this, I mean, I think it's been a consistent issue that's been brought up, but it's
Yes.
become forefront again right after Unene, if I'm saying that
Yeah.
right, and what
Renana,
happened
yeah.
to her. It became an issue again because we in this moment of protest and
Yes.
people, standing up and being counted again. But the
Right.
issue that for me existed was as men, there's a very straight, there's a line in the sand now that I understand that I understood the last time was that if you're not acting against gender-based violence beyond lip service and a tweet, a Facebook message, read like a Instagram story, if you're not
Yeah.
taking discernible action, then you're complicit to the problem as a man. So I decided to take some savings that I had and donate 1,000 rand to 5 institutions that work in the gender-based violence space for women and children. And then I put out the call to 5 men in each tweet for each organization, and I
Right.
encourage them to either find their own gender-based violence institution or organization that's doing work and make a donation that meets mine or exceeds
Yeah.
it. Um, and yeah, I put out the call and started tagging as many men as I knew as possible. Some ignored it, some responded, some that I didn't even tag responded, which was great. But the least I think men can do is talk about gender-based violence, which a lot of men didn't do. They talked about PS5s when the PS5 dropped.
Yeah.
Before that, they were quiet.
And the
They
twerking.
talked about men twerking for a PS5 before they spoke about gender-based violence, which only highlights the 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 magnitude of like the block in South African men's minds because the problem doesn't affect them, they ignore it. But as soon as we talk about race relations, championing,
Yeah.
tweeting, action is being taken. So for me, it was like, let me make myself accountable and let me hold other men accountable. And that was for me only the second step because I done that initially
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Yeah.
in September and I managed to sell some artwork and took that 30,000 Rand that I managed to raise and donated to those same 5 organizations. Um, and beyond that now, it's for consistency because since I did that and until now, I hadn't done anything for the fight against
Yeah.
gender-based violence, and I recognized that flaw in myself. And I was like, I need to be consistent with this the same way I'm consistent with other things. So what I decided to do as a second phase from those donations and um, challenging other men to make donations is that I've contacted 2 of those organizations. There's one called Power, and they have a branch in
Yeah.
Tembisa, and there's
People,
another called Frida Hartley. And what I've
what is
said to
power
them is that
again? People of
I can't remember
people of
the
war
acronym,
against
but
women
it's
abuse or something like that.
POWA. So, people should
Yeah.
check it out. And the other one is Frida Hartley Organization. And what I've said to those 2 organizations is myself personally and Studio Bila will become will go on their books as volunteers and then we'll lend our creative skill set for whatever they need. If they need design, if they need to create an awareness campaign, if they need to create a money raising campaign, if they need ideas to raise a win, whatever the thing is, these are the skill sets that I have and Studio Bila has, and we're going to use those um, as a catalyst to help, and we'll do that
Yeah.
perpetually. So it's not going to be a once off, it's going to be
Yo, man,
consistent.
count me in. Count me
And
in.
outside of that, I want to be going there every single week for at least a couple of hours and volunteering, whether it's sweeping the floors, whatever it is. But those are the kinds of actions I think men are going to have to need to take for the reality to come home before it has to happen to their daughters, their wives, their mothers, their grandmothers, their aunts. This is
Right.
a huge issue. It's about humanity, and we are lacking it as South African men, to
Yeah,
be
I
frank.
I definitely think we like. Actually, I know we like him, but
Yeah,
I think the main reason why I personally think it's like is because we don't have the conversations. I think I was telling Hayden this. We just don't have the conversations around us as men, and what I've come to realize is that um, because we don't have certain conversations, we actually pro those topics as men because like we only we only talk negative. I don't know how to explain it, bro. Like, what we talk about is what we talk about and what we do, and what we talk about doesn't really matter to us. You get what I mean? Like, that's how
yeah,
I see it sometimes. So the more we
yeah,
have like more conversations like this, the more it happens around us, the more someone will be able to pick up the like someone will be able to stand for it and will know that that person won't do it again. Um,
yeah. It's
and
accountability in a word, man. It's
pretty
if you're
much,
at the Royale or you're at a braai or you're walking down the street and a woman gets catcalled or some man harasses a woman, you step in between that situation and you hold that man accountable because generally speaking, it's a cowardice act that they won't commit when another man calls them out on it. And because in their minds they see women as weaker, they think they can get away with whatever, and they have some kind of possession over those women who in which they don't. And as soon as another man calls them out for it, the more it happens, the more they know that the behavior is being condemned and it won't be tolerated, and it's a no go. You know what I mean?
right? I definitely know
That
what
and
you mean, bro.
that's exactly how it needs to happen. Whenever like and even with close friends, it's educate them. If they persist on a thing, ostracize them and leave them out because in psychology papers it's been proven that one like a big catalyst for behavioral change is if in a community or in a group of
Yeah, oust.
people you hold close, if they
Yeah.
exclude you and they hold you accountable for something and they tell you they won't allow you back in until you change it, there's a high probability that you will change that behavior. And
Uh,
and there's a pyramid of this stuff from like locker room talk to uh, giving yourself access to women, smacking someone's bum or doing whatever, and it escalates to the point where it becomes the most heinous of the violence. But it starts
right.
with how you speak about women, how you speak to them, uh, and it just escalates because you allowing someone else to say derogatory things or use derogatory words for the next person, they take it a step higher and they go, well, if I can say this, then maybe I can touch her whenever I want to and pull her
Hmm.
hand in the street. The next person goes, oh, then maybe her body belongs to me, and then escalates and escalates. But it starts at the base level with our mouths and the words that we use to communicate, and also what we're imprinting into kids and young boys through these conversations.
100%. 100%, bro. So, before the end of every show, I give the guest a chance to give us like some words of wisdom, bro. So please, like, leave us with some word of wisdom.
I don't
Leave the
know, I don't
future
know
with
about all
the
that, man. But yeah, my advice, I wouldn't call them words of wisdom, but just my advice in life is, um, even when you feel afraid, proceed and act, and don't wait for the conditions to be perfect. Whatever you want to do, um, just do the thing, whether you feel like you're expert at it or not. Do not be
just
afraid to act and do the thing that you want to do. And if you fail, do not be afraid to begin again. And that, for me, encapsulates, the human spirit,
everything.
the way that we approach
100%.
everything. So those would be my
100%.
words. Use them, don't use them.
It's up to
It is
you.
what it- Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you so much, bro. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for the data. You know what I'm saying?
it's a
Um,
pleasure,
I
man.
guess I
Made him
guess
a
we'll meet on Friday, which is tomorrow. Because this drops obviously on Thursday. No one knows
Yes,
when
sir.
this drops, but regardless, everybody, check out Anthony Bila's new short film, The Isolationist, tomorrow. Um, just go to his pages. Yeah, bro. Shout out. Thank you for your time. Stay blessed.
Yes, sir.
All right, bless up.